Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter. And today we're going to be talking about 20 palettes that I was so hype, so excited to purchase when they came out, but for whatever reason I didn't, and then I completely forgot they existed. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me. We're getting into it right now. So I'm gonna see if I'm not too lazy. I'm gonna throw up pictures of all the palettes that we're talking about here, and I'm gonna try to recall what it is about that palette I was excited about, and then what it is about that palette that I didn't end up buying it. And the first one to talk about, I think, is Urban Decay Backtalk. So this palette was super cute. It was like mauvey, rosy pink tones, which of course at that time was like my jam. And then they had a quad of face colors on the other side. I think there was like a highlight and 3 blushes. By the way, I don't have these pictures in front of me. I'm going off of memory, but I feel like I should remember these palettes because I was so hyped for them. So there was like a bunch of eye colors on one side, a bunch of face colors on the other side, and a mirror in the middle. And I think at that time I was just coming to the realization that so many makeup items went on sale eventually that you really didn't have to like jump to buy things at full price. So I kind of waited and waited, and then all of a sudden it was gone. So I kind of missed the boat because I was assuming it would go on sale and it never did. And the funny thing is, this palette is what kind of prompted me to make this list to film this video, because I was scrolling around on Mercari and actually saw people selling the Backtalk palette. And I'm like, do you guys realize that palette is from like 2016? Like, that's an old ass palette. Next to talk about is the Too Faced Clover palette. Now, the Clover palette was this really pretty sky blue tin packaging, and then it had the Too Faced owner, his dog on it, and then like a bunch of other like little animals and balloons and whatever. And inside it gave me, like, in my mind, it was this really bright, poppy, neon, colorful palette, but in reality it's actually not really that at all. There's like a pop of yellow and a pop of pink, but there's not really like a lot of bright colors in it. So I think I ended up kind of waiting because I felt like I wanted it for the packaging more so than the actual product inside, and then eventually it went away and I kind of forgot about it. Is it C Color? I think did a dupe of that palette though, and I did get that when they had all their palettes on sale for 1 penny a piece. And looking at that palette, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't buy the Too Faced one for like $50. Next up is the ColourPop, I think it was called the Perception palette. It was a collab palette that they did pretty early on, and it was, if I remember correctly, like 16 pans, and it had these paint splatters all over the front of it in like gold foil, and then the inside was like some neutrals and then some like pops of rainbowy colors. And I thought that palette was beautiful. I loved the paint splatter vibe. I loved the colors that they picked and put on the inside. It was on sale for a while, and I just kind of figured like eventually it'll be on sale and I'll be ordering something else at the same time, and then I can just throw it in my cart. And the timing just never quite worked out, and then it was gone. So I kind of forgot about that one too. The other ColourPop one that I kind of forgot about was Kathleen Light's So Jaded. Now, when So Jaded was about to come out and first came out, and everybody and their brother was putting up like videos about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I need this palette. I need this palette. Like, there is no way I can get through my day without it. And then I looked at the price of it and I was like, for ColourPop? Because I think it was like one of the most expensive ColourPop palettes that had come out around that time. So I kind of was like, I'll wait for a sale, and then it never really went on sale, and then it was gone. So I just kind of let that one go. I did not love that there was 2 pressed glitters in it. I'm really not a pressed glitter fan at all, as you guys know. So I think those 2 things kind of were what made me end up not getting it. Next up was one of the Norvina palettes. So Norvina, when they did those like 3 or 4 palettes like right back to back, really overwhelming. I think that was what, the summer of 18 or 19. There was like an orange one though. I think that was volume 1, and it had gold butterflies on the front. And then on the inside it was like predominantly warm toned browns and oranges with a couple pops of green. And you guys know me, I wear not warm tones, not browns. So why did I feel the need to get this palette? I don't know. The colors that really drew me in were on the complete left column. See, this is how sad I remember this. The complete left column, I think it was the second and third shades down, there was like a champagne gold white color, and then right below it was like a sky blue color. And those two colors together, every time I looked at this palette, I looked at those two colors and I was like, I want it. But I did not need it, and thank God I talked myself out of it, because I really don't think I needed that palette. I think it would have just been collecting dust in my collection. So I'm glad I skipped over it. But I did recently see it at TJ Maxx for about 20 bucks, and I really almost caved and got it. If I wasn't getting ready to purchase so many other things that day that were new launches coming out, like Glamlight Rick and Morty, I probably would have purchased it. The next one to talk about, and I'm trying to do these kind of in order from like when they would have been released, but I know it's not a perfect order. But the next one to talk about would be the Ofra Glitch palettes. So there was like a volume 1 and a volume 2, and these were 9-pan palettes that were completely just like sparkly topper shades, and I was obsessed. They had a sparkly black, they had a sparkly blue. That's all I needed to hear, and I wanted them. But I think they were like $29 or $30 originally, and I just felt like for what they were, they should have been cheaper, because the metallic formula for Ofra, it's nice, but it's like a nice intense satin or like a soft shimmer. It's not like multi-chrome, it's not duochrome, it doesn't have dimensional sparkle in it. So I just felt like for the price, like the price and what I was going to get didn't quite line up, and I have so many special shades in my collection that I really don't need to be bothering with stuff like that. So I did go ahead and pass over it. But oh my gosh, every time I saw it like in stores, online, it was on sale on Ofra's website, I was so close to buying. The one time I did almost buy it was shortly before the owner of Ofra got into some hot water for some comments that he had made, and then after that I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna take a little break from them. So next up is the Lucky Bunny Envy palette, and this palette I think came out a little bit before I started getting into makeup, but it was a predominantly like green palette with a couple pops of eggplant purple, which I just thought was a beautiful color story. The packaging was like literally nothing to write home about because it was black packaging. I think it just had like some writing of the name of the palette on the front. There wasn't any like picture art or anything. And it was coming from Australia, if I remember correctly. Their brand was Australian, so the cost plus the conversion rate plus the shipping just got to be a little bit too much. So I was like, no, and I passed over it for the cost reason. Next up is the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette. Now, when they first announced this collection, they showed off the little like dresser that you could get with it and all the little accessories, the tattoos, the notebook, this, that, and the third. And I was like, yes, I am buying all of this. And then I saw the price and I was like, I am buying none of this. Because I thought it was a really pretty collection, but the price for like the little dresser thing was so expensive. And of course, everybody that got it in PR is like, it's worth it because it's such great quality and blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't going to get it in PR. I was going to get it for paying money for it. And I just felt like the cost was a little bit too much. So then I thought maybe I'll just buy the palette at some point, and then the palette was out of stock. Like the couple things I wanted to cherry pick out of the collection were never in stock at the same time for a long time after it launched. And then after a while, I just kind of forgot about it and moved on to something else. So at this point, I don't necessarily think I need it because I feel like I have those types of colors in other palettes. But yeah, it's still a really pretty palette. That much I can say. All right, next up is e.l.f. X Chipotle. And listen, I am a freak for Chipotle. I love Chipotle. I'll eat it once a week, if not more frequently. When I was pregnant, I used to eat it like once or twice a week. It was ridiculous. So good. Oh, and if you're a Chipotle stan like me, leave me down below what it is you normally order because I want to see what you guys order. Usually for me, it's either their carnitas, if they'll like strain it out a little bit, otherwise it gets too wet. The chicken, sometimes I do like light rice, sometimes I do no rice, no beans, fajita veg, guac, medium salsa, corn, sour cream, cheese. Let me know what your thoughts are. But anyway, the palette. So, of course, the e.l.f. Chipotle collection spoke to me. I wanted that chip bag so badly, and it sold out so quick, and I didn't get my hands on it. But the actual palette itself was basically just a bunch of like satin neutral shades, because of course when you sort of summarize each of those foods on a Chipotle line into a color, it's all kind of beige and brown. So for me, I was like, you know what, I don't really need this because it's just beige and brown. I'm gonna keep it forever because it says Chipotle on it, but I'm never gonna use it. And I went ahead and passed over it for that reason. But I remember the day that it launched, I was running on the treadmill before work and sitting there trying to justify in my mind like buying the whole collection, knowing full well I wasn't going to use it. Okay, next up is Meet Me in the Underworld by Lois Cosmetics, and this one definitely had me in a straight chokehold, okay? This palette was beautiful. Those greens, the blues, the cover art was stunning. The brush set they were launching at the same time, gorgeous, even though I know it's private label, gorgeous anyway. And like I was enamored. I watched every video that came out about that palette, and I was so excited the day of launch. I remember being at work. This is so sad. I was working at the hospital. I remember being at work and taking like a little 5-minute break, pulling it up on my phone, and I'm literally about ready to check out. Like I'm ready to hit the place order button. My address is in there, my shipping information, everything is in there. And one of my colleagues came up and started talking to me about a patient. So I'm like, let me just put my phone to the side and listen to what he has to say. And I'm like, And while I'm listening to him, I'm like, this thing is going to sell out. So I get him taken care of and I go back to it. And then I just had this kind of like, maybe I shouldn't buy it. Maybe there was a reason I wasn't supposed to buy it. And I sat and waited for like 30 minutes. I mean, I was working, but I like kind of thought about it for another 30 minutes and then it sold out or something. I think it sold out. Anyway, I ended up not getting it. And I was so bummed. And then it restocked a couple times and I almost bought it on the restock, but I just couldn't like will myself to buy it. Like I wanted it, but then when I was seeing the videos, it seemed like the metallics in that palette were just really not that special. And so I ultimately talked myself out of it. And I'm glad I did, because I eventually ended up picking up the Melt Gemini 2 palette, which is basically those same types of reds and greens put together. And I love that palette. Is that thunder? Question marks? Okay. Next up is the Give Me Glow. I call it the Skull palette, but I'm sure it has a much prettier name. But it's the 4 quads of kind of the pinky, rosy, plummy neutrals with that skull and flower cover to it. I loved the packaging for that. When they started sneak peeking the packaging, I was like, whatever's in it, I want it. It could be 16 pans of dog food and I would still want it. And then they showed the actual palette and I was like, how do I justify paying this much money for a color story I definitely already have for shades that are really not that much different from one another? And I watched Batty Bean's video and she talked about how the colors were not like really separated enough, like they were all kind of similar on the eyes. And then I was like, you know what, maybe I should wait and think about this for a little while because of the cost. So I thought about it for a while and forgot about it entirely. Another one that I forgot about was the Simply Posh Northern Lights palette, and this was before I even really knew who Simply Posh was, but I had seen this palette in a video of Lauren Mae Beauties, and I just thought all the colors in there were so beautiful. It's those beautiful silky duochromes, had to have it. And then I was like, I need to figure out what brand that is, and of course it took me a while to figure that out for some reason. And then by the time I figured it out, it was out of stock, and then I was like, I'll just wait for it to come back into stock, and then I just forgot about it entirely. Like, going out of stock for these palettes, honestly, is like a death knell for me, because I literally will just forget about them entirely after that. Okay, we have 7 more. I'm sorry, this is a really long video. The next ones to talk about were the Wet n Wild, My Melody, and Kuromi palettes. Specifically the Kuromi palette, the purple palette with like pops of gold and browns. This looked so pretty, and I can't remember what it was about this collection at the time that I didn't jump on the whole thing. I purchased the face palette and I've purchased the 2 dual-sided brushes. I don't know why I didn't get the palette, if it went out of stock or if I was just having a hard time tracking it down or what, but I didn't pick it up originally, and then I was kicking myself because I just think that palette is so cute. But after a while, like I was looking for it on Mercari and stuff like that, and after a while I just kind of let it go and then forgot about it entirely. So clearly it wasn't like the very top of my mind. Next is Glaminatrix Glamorous. Now, I recently discovered Glaminatrix. I mean, I'd seen them before, but I recently was making purchases from them and kind of accepting of the $20 US shipping, but it's fine. Everything's fine. But the Glamorous palette came out on the heels of a couple other like fuchsia, purple, blue palettes. One of which was the Beauty Bay Age of Opulence palette. So once I had that one in my collection, I had seen this Glaminatrix Glamorous palette. I saw the Cara Beauty Bloom palette. There was a bunch that came out kind of around the same time with these color stories, and I just couldn't justify paying to get this particular palette. So I ended up not getting it, and I kind of forgot about it, honestly. But part of me definitely wishes I would have picked it up because the formula from Glaminatrix, their shimmers are so beautiful, so like sparkly and dimensional that I think I probably would have really loved that palette even if it was a similar color story. All right, the next up is the Jolie Beauty Ethereality palette. When I saw this one, I think I even had this in a purchase or pass at some point. I'm sure you guys could see back in my channel, but when I saw this I was like, oh my gosh, look at these beautiful pastel, pinky, purple, blue, green color story, all these shimmers. And then I saw it had a couple pressed glitters in it, and I was like, I don't really want all those pressed glitters. So I ended up kind of waiting because I was like, I don't know anything about this brand. It's from the UK. Let's see what the actual quality is like before I even decide to make a purchase. And I watched a couple videos and I was like, we'll wait and see what else they come out with. And what else they came out with was actually, hold on. So the other palette they came out with was this Sirens palette. And at the time you're watching this, I hope I have already gotten into this palette, but at the time I'm filming it, I have not. But it looks like this. And it's just this beautiful, it's like the dark, swampy, vampy, younger sister to that Ethereality palette. It does still have 4 pressed glitters in it, but I did pick up this like glue that you can use on your lids to hold the pressed glitter, and then you can kind of peel it off like a piece of tape at the end of the night. So I'm hoping that works well. We'll see. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. But I ended up not buying that Jolie Beauty palette because I was just kind of waiting to see what else they released. And then when they released Sirens, I was like, I have to buy that one. Next up is the Sugar Drizzle Trash Panda palette, and this one is their like raccoon themed palette. It's all duochrome shades. It's so pretty, and I still think at some point I may end up picking it up, but when it came out there was so many other things coming out that I was like, I want that, I want that, I want that. So decisions had to be made, and so this one didn't get picked, and then later on I just kind of forgot it existed, honestly. All right. Next is the Salem Cosmetics New Orleans Buffy palettes. Now they came out with I think it was a Buffy and an Angel and then a Buffy and Spike palette, and I definitely wanted the Buffy and Spike palette even though it was the red bright colored story, because Buffy and Spike was like the couple for me, right? I didn't really care about the Angel love storyline, but I wanted to get both of them for sake of completion. And then they were out of stock, and I figured they'd restock at some point, and they didn't. So I was like, I guess that was just like a limited edition thing that's not coming back. I don't know. But I did go ahead and pass over those because, again, it was at a time where there was a bunch of stuff that I wanted. I ended up actually putting that on like my birthday and Christmas list because I figured if somebody got it for me, that'd be great. And if they didn't, it wouldn't be like the very end of the world. So okay, next is the Terra Moon's Cosmic Wanderer palette. So this was another one like Glaminatrix, Glamorous palette. This one was again that kind of blues and greens and purples, pops up pink kind of thing. Lots of sparkly dimensional shimmers. I really liked this one. It sold out super fast, and I never actually even checked for a restock, to be perfectly honest. I don't even know if they're still making that palette or if they just completely got rid of it, but it was a palette that definitely really caught my eye. I was like ready to buy, and then I just missed it, and then it missed me. And then the last one to talk about is the Adept Seahorse palette. Now this is inarguably the most expensive palette on this list. when I saw the sneak peek of the cover for this palette, I was like, oh my gosh, this cover is gorgeous. Whatever's inside, I'm buying it. Because it was, I think, a 15 pan palette, and it had this beautiful ombre gradient, the seahorses on there, like making a little emblem. Very cute, very nautical, loved it. And then we saw the inside, and it was all these like iridescent, they pitched it as an all iridescent multi-chrome palette, and I was like, be still my heart, I've been waiting for something like this. But what I was looking for is something like this, where it's like truly like iridescent shades, right? What they launched was more like pastel, like light colored, kind of candy coated, if you will, multi-chrome shades. And they are pretty colors, that much I will give them. But when I watched videos of people swatching them, I was like, there's a lot of colors in here that look very, very similar. I think there was like 3 or 4 different shades that I thought had basically a dupe of themselves within the palette. And at that point, it was like paying what, $160 for a palette with a bunch of duplicate shades in it. I was like, nope, not gonna get me on that one. So the day of launch came, and I still was like, should I just buy it and be like, well, bought it for science, ha ha ha, you know? And I kind of talked myself out of it, because I was like, wait and see what regular people have to say, like people who didn't get it in PR. Wait to see what customers have to say. So I waited and waited, and then customers had to say pretty much what I thought, which was, there's a bunch of duplicate shades in here, and although it's nice, it's not worth the price. So I kind of forgot all about it, even though that launch actually was not very long ago at all. All right. And with that said, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you go, and I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye!